Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining. We're going to get started in just a few minutes here. If you scroll to the top of the chat, I've posted the resources for this Tech Talking workshop. I'll also be posting them later. So if you want to take a moment to just get settled, we're going to get started in just a minute. Go ahead and add to the chat where you're joining from today. On a scale from 1 to 5, how familiar are you with blockchain technologies? Go ahead and answer the question in the poll so we can get a feel for where all of you are at technically. So if you click at the bottom of the polls there, you can choose options 1 through 5. Welcome. If you're just joining us, we're going to get started in 1 more minute. If you want to go ahead and click down at the bottom of the screen on the right-hand side where it says polls, go ahead and answer our polling question. You'll be able to vote from 1 to 5 on how familiar you are with blockchain technologies. Looks like we've got a lot of new people, a lot of people that are very new to blockchain, so that's fantastic. Posting your scores in the chat. If you want to go ahead over to the polls at the bottom of the screen and vote 1 to 5 there so we can put your vote in with everyone else's. So I just want to thank you all so much for coming today, taking some time out of your week to join us. This is our IBM Blockchain 101 for developers. If you haven't already, go ahead and answer our polling question at the bottom of your screen where it says polls. If you click on that, you can vote 1 to 5. How familiar are you with blockchain technologies? Just to cover a few housekeeping questions. Yes, this event is recorded. You will have access to the recording. Is there any pre-work or prep that needed to be done before this event? So if you haven't already, please create an IBM Cloud account. The link posted here. It's also posted in the answer to the question. Will you have access to the slides you will have access to the slides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post quickly before we get started all of the resources again. I will post them again at the end as well. So if you'd like to follow along or even do this at home at a later time, it will require you to sign up for an IBM Cloud account. It is free. So let's go ahead and get started with our event. So thank you all so much for coming. The best part of this, my job, is being able to interact with all of you. So thank you so much for taking some time out of your week to be here. Thank you, Daniel, for being here. We're gonna introduce ourselves in just a moment. So as you've noticed in the chat, I've posted the link to the slides. I've also posted the link for the playback. So this is being recorded. You will be able to access it at the same link that you joined the event today. I would like to also encourage you all to take a look at our IBM Blockchain Platform Blockchain Essentials badge. So this is Blockchain Essentials learning course that you can take for free, earn a badge, put it on your LinkedIn or any of your social media platforms, any place that you're advertising your skills as a developer. Highly recommend. It is free to use. I've included the link for that as well. So I'd like for us all to get to know each other a little better. So if you want, no pressure to share in the chat your name and pronouns, your title, company, or program that you're with, where you're from, or maybe where you're joining from during this unprecedented time of quarantine and confusion. Something you love, and then a quirk, something that's uniquely weird or different about you. So I'll start so that I can give you kind of an example. So my name is Jenna. I am a developer advocate with IBM. My pronouns are she, her. I recently moved over from software and a cloud infrastructure role over to advocacy. I'm currently joining from Austin. I'm from Detroit. And my team is actually in New York City. So kind of a little all over the place. Something I love are my dogs. I have little Yorkies, and they are pretty weird. Something that's uniquely weird or different about me. So I usually go with the same thing. I'll go with something a little different. So I've lived in a few different countries. So when I was in high school, I studied abroad in Spain. I went back when I was in college, and then I stayed with some family in Israel a few years ago. And I'm up for Japan next. So any of you out there, I might be coming your way. So if you would like to stay connected with me, feel free to follow me on social. I'll send out some connecting information later on as well, at JWritten, pretty much on all social platforms. And I'd like to thank Daniel so much for coming. I'm going to let him introduce himself before we get started here.
Hey everyone, I'm Daniel. I can kind of go along with Jenna's format. So Daniel Tall, I am an offering manager for the IBM Blockchain Platform and obviously work at IBM. Something I love to surf. I'm a big surfer, and kind of along the I didn't know that about you, Jenna, that you were recently in Israel. It's funny because I actually lived there. So something different about me is I know how to speak Hebrew fluently. It's actually, my parents are from there. So that's awesome. I didn't even know that about you.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Very cool to learn something new about you as well. Thank you all for sharing in the chat as well. I'll be interacting with you throughout our session, and I highly encourage you all to connect with each other as well. We're all now a part of each other's network and a part of each other's community. So if you would like to follow along, you'll need to sign up for an IBM Cloud account. It is free. So here's the link to do that. I've posted it in the chat. It will be an IBM Cloud free light tier account. And you'll know you're in the right place when you see this login screen. So you'll be able to log in if you already have an account or create a new account. So let's go ahead and get started. So what to expect from this evening. So I see a lot of you are fairly new to IBM blockchain and blockchain technologies in general, which is fantastic. We're glad you're here. You're why we're here. And then Daniel is going to give a talk and kind of give you a background of what is blockchain, what are blockchain technologies, how does IBM play a part in that. And then we're going to move on to an IBM blockchain VS Code workshop. So I'll show you how to get started and get set up on VS Code to start building smart contracts and building with IBM blockchain technologies. So let me just.
Cool. Let me take over the screen and I'll put this in presentation mode. So can everyone see my screen? Yes, no, maybe so. Did I lose you there?
Nope, we got it. Yep,
okay, perfect. Okay, cool. So just looking at the poll really quick, I see 16 votes for a 2 on the scale from 1 to 5, 3 votes, 28% of people have dabbled in it, and 2 votes for a 4, which is getting close to experts. So that's awesome. I think this talk is kind of going to cover a range. So the beginning part is going to be mostly around what blockchain technology is, where it came from, and where it's sort of headed. A little bit about the delineations between distributed ledger technologies, which is kind of the overarching umbrella term that blockchain falls into, and explaining the difference between the few different types there are. And then we'll go a little bit into a high-level view of what a blockchain application and the architecture of a blockchain application looks like. And I'll end my talk around what IBM is doing in blockchain, how we're helping developers make it easier to create and build their applications and solutions, and hopefully give you a little understanding of where we are in our journey. And then I'll hand it back over to Jenna, who will walk you all through a very interesting tutorial of how to use the VS Code extension and really build an application there, and focusing on smart contract building. So with that, let's dive in. So what is blockchain? For those of you who are more beginners, a blockchain is really an immutable ledger and consensus. And what do I mean by that? An immutable ledger from the standpoint, and maybe it's easier to get into the background. I'm sure many of you have heard of Bitcoin. So in 2008, an anonymous persons named Satoshi Nakamoto put out a white paper that talked a little bit about this peer-to-peer network where you can come to consensus, which is an agreement of multiple people together, to work together to transact, specifically transactions of money or currency across a digital network. And the way they did that was implementing a ledger that shows the way transactions move from person to person, that is encrypted with certain types of cryptography to make sure that as transactions are added to that ledger, they cannot change and they're cemented in there basically forever. And it all happens through certain rules that the majority of the network of participants agree towards. And this was pretty revolutionary. It was a way to do this with the technology that we had back then. And it really provided a new way to look at, all kinds of financial systems, but also systems in general that can implement this structure to really help different people work on networks that are quote unquote decentralized or don't need trust in order to function. And the biggest thing that came out of this paper was his proof of work algorithm, which is focused on exactly that, providing helping a lot of people come to a consensus based on large compute resources that they use to solve certain mathematical problems. But we're not really going to get too deep into what proof of work is. What we want to do is talk about the general idea of blockchain. So I think this kind of sums up the basic idea. And then this developed and people started to try and understand how they can take this type of technology and build on it in order to use it in different ways and in different applications. And I think one of the next most important things that came out of this was smart contracts. Smart contracts are really pieces of code that let you implement business logic into your network. On top of that, shared immutable ledger and consensus. It lets you take those pieces, agreeing on certain rules and having this immutable database basically that shows you the way transactions have changed over time, who owns assets, and what's happening in the world. And it allows you to implement your application or business logic and rules that explain exactly how that network can work. And what it's really done is enabled people to build applications on top of this type of structure. So on top of that immutable ledger and implementing consensus there. And really this was kind of brought to bear with Ethereum, which is, you could think of it as kind of blockchain 2.0 in the evolution of blockchains. Bitcoin was part one. I'd say Ethereum was the next step in creating these smart contracts that let you really create applications, or what they call dApps, distributed applications. Now, where this comes in is that what we talked about are blockchains, but like I explained, this structure with the immutable ledger, the consensus, and the smart contracts can be used and is being used today by many different organizations, as well as just the general public, to do all kinds of different things, whether it's applications or integrations within current systems at larger enterprises. And they're all using blockchain to help them really either distribute the workloads that they're using, as well as simplify and add a bit of transparency to a lot of the structures that are in place today. Where distributed ledger technologies come in is they're kind of this umbrella term. And what I mean by that is, today blockchains have gone in so many different ways and so many different directions, and blockchain is a certain architecture and way that transactions are put onto blocks, and they're basically immutable in this chain of history that one block comes after another, and it creates this blockchain. There's a lot of other different technologies such as tangles, hash graphs, etc. And they all go and try to achieve the same thing, which is the ability to have this journal or ledger that is immutable with consensus that everyone agrees on without a single administrator that owns what happens. And when we think about all these different architectures, what's important to know is that there are very different protocols or frameworks that are focused on certain aspects for certain types of networks that need to be built. So there are public blockchains or distributed ledger technologies, and there are private ones. And then there are permissionless and permissioned ones. So when we think about public versus private, we usually think about who can join. So when you hear this is a public blockchain network or a public blockchain protocol, that usually means it is a protocol or framework that is really open. Anyone can join. There are no firewalls. There's no one blocking you. Anyone can get onto the network, start accessing it, and use whatever resources they need. But those networks tend to be a little bit more resource intensive. When you have private blockchains, you have blockchains that do have these, security permissions and things that only allow certain people to join. So it's closed behind a firewall. Only certain people are allowed in. When you think of permissioned and permissionless, this comes to what you can and can't do on the network. So a permissionless network means you can do whatever you want once you're in that network. Mining, making transactions, looking at the ledger, whatever you want to do. And a permissioned network means you have to have an identity on the network, and that identity lets people know who you are and what you can and can't do within that network. So to give you all an example, public permissionless networks are ones like Bitcoin or Ethereum. I put a few on here, Hedera and Algorand as well. These are networks that anyone can join, public, and when you join, you have the ability to do whatever you want within that network, permissionless. As we look at the different networks across, you have the public permissioned, which is anyone can join, but you are connected to a certain identity and can only do certain things. The bottom left is private permissionless, which is only certain people are allowed in, but once in, you can do whatever your heart desires within that network. And where we're going to focus on today and where IBM functions the most is this blockchain for business area, which is private and permissioned. So that means only certain people are allowed in, and those that are allowed in have certain identities and rules of what they can and can't do on the network. And that's very important in business because what you're doing is integrating this into certain either supply chains or certain methodologies that people use today, and different business partners interact in order to achieve certain goals. So a lot of times for multiple companies that are in very regulated spaces, they want to be able to trust that they know who's in the network with them and what's happening to a certain degree. There's, of course, certain pieces of privacy and permissions that we'll talk about in a bit. But what blockchain solves, and specifically blockchain for business and what we call private permission blockchains, is it provides a shared ledger to help there be a very transparent, easy way to understand what's happening in the network. You have provenance, which is the ability to track certain assets throughout their lifetime and throughout the life cycle of their journey in a certain chain of events. You have immutability, which we talked about is the fact that once a transaction happens, it's not going to be changed and it's cemented on there forever. Finality, which means transactions happen, and once they execute, they have happened. There's no going back. And lastly, consensus, which is, again, an agreed upon truth across multiple parties together. So from that perspective, I think that kind of rounds out what blockchain is. And what I want to dive into is what a blockchain application looks like and how it might function. So a typical enterprise system and blockchain application has, I would say, these three major pieces to it. It has the presentation layer on the right, which is your front end UI, UX, what a client would use. In the middle, it has your business application layer. So that has to do with everything that deals with connections. So your APIs and gateways that pull data and connect the front end and back end. It has your business logic, like your smart contracts that tell you exactly what rules are and aren't allowed, who can make certain transactions, who can't. And then you have your last layer, which is your data layer. And that's your system of record. So that could be your database, your blockchain, generally known as kind of the backend system of where you keep all of the essential information and data that you plan to use and that you need in order for your application to function. And there are multiple roles here that are played throughout the life cycle and building of a project, as well as maintaining a project. You have we'll start on the right-hand side like we did before. So you have on your UI, UX, you'll probably have the end user. So specifically someone who's actually using and trying out your application. On the business application layer, you'll have your IT people as well as your developers. So your IT people means, someone who is upkeeping the APIs, maintaining them. A lot of times it could be your SREs who are helping the customer and end user. And then you have your developer. And your developer is the person who's writing your smart contracts, who's building out your applications and helping you maintain those applications once you've built them. And then you have your data layer, and this deals more with the infrastructure and permissions of the back end, and really who's governing and creating the rules of the network. So you have your deployer and operator who's really helping you build out your application on the blockchain side. And you have your administrator who's really inputting the rules into the system and governing the way certain aspects of the infrastructure is being owned on the back end by certain parties. Now, this is a little bit of a deeper view of what they deal with. If you look on the right-hand side, we have, again, the application, and this kind of shows what it might look like to make a transaction on a blockchain application. So an end user may push some type of transaction. That transaction through an API talks to your app server and integration logic or your smart contract. And if they are approved to make that transaction, it invokes the smart contract, makes a transaction through that, and actually puts it onto the blockchain. Once it's been validated and verified, then it's committed. And that's kind of the way a transaction works onto the blockchain. You can also think of some type of query, or if an end user wants to look something up in the blockchain, it goes through a similar process where they ask, invoke some type of request. The API sends that request to the app server, and that really checks the smart contract to make sure they have permission to see whatever they're requesting. And through some type of through basically, depending on the protocol, in this case Hyperledger Fabric, you are actually having that transaction go onto the blockchain, get validated, committed onto that blockchain, and really even queries get committed. It shows that some person queried the blockchain, and you can see that someone requested to see that information, and then it shoots back that information if everything was approved. That was a quick high-level overview, and I know it could be kind of confusing and a quick dive into this technical piece. So please put all your questions in the chat, and I promise I'll get to them after I finish presenting. But for now, I'm gonna kind of go through the presentation, and at the end, I'll answer all those questions. So with that, I want to dive into what IBM is doing in blockchain and how we're really helping you guys, all you developers, be able to work through all that complicated stuff and build your applications as fast as possible in the simplest way possible. Ooh, and this slide looks a little funky here, but I think the main idea here and what I kind of want to show is that IBM's kind of been working in blockchain for a long time. Since 2015, we've started using and building a blockchain and a specific protocol today known as Hyperledger Fabric. And throughout the years, what had actually happened is we went and contributed that to the open source community, and it is now governed by the Linux Foundation. And it's an open source project. You can all go look at the code, download the code, and start messing around with it, trying it out. And that has been worked on for many years now. Once that launched and everyone started using it, we decided to create a commercial product of Hyperledger Fabric that provides enterprises everything they need in order to create, real use cases in production to help them with support they may need, provide them high availability, disaster recovery, all those essential things to run full-scale production networks on a blockchain. And one of the biggest things that we provided was the IBM Blockchain Platform, which is that piece. It is that that commercial piece of Hyperledger Fabric. And today, which I'll talk to in a second, is what we've kind of done and how that's developed until now, 2020. What's interesting to see is IBM has a vast just range of different use cases that they've been working on. Things from, provenance to healthcare, insurance, trade finance, identity, to call out the MiPasa project, which is a partnership with Oracle, Microsoft, and Hasera. It really came about when COVID-19 started to become rampant in March, and they decided to build a platform that really helps to aggregate data from legitimate sources and provide, provenance and the ability to understand where the data came from and to be able to use that data in the right way to make predictions and provide analytics for everyone to understand around how the virus is spreading and what the best ways would be to try and slow that down. So that was a great project that came up really quickly and has been being built since March. We have things like Farmer Connect, which is, I'm a big coffee drinker. I love to drink coffee, and Farmer Connect literally tracks the coffee from the farmer to the store until it gets into your hands, and at the end of the day is in your cup and you get to drink it. It tracks your coffee beans and provides, this transparent way to understand where those coffee beans were, where they were in the supply chain, how they got from the farmer to the store, and at the end of the day, into your cup. So those are just a few interesting use cases. There are many, many more, as you guys can all see here. So if anyone has any questions on those and some of the work IBM is doing, you're always free to drop a question in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer those. What I do want to call out is why IBM is so great in the blockchain space. And that's really because we're a one-stop shop for anything you need, right? We have this large ecosystem of partners who are helping us create all of these incredible solutions. We have these solutions which are so great, and companies can come and join that help both simplify and make these different industries more transparent, and also help the end customer see more transparency in the things that they buy at the end of the day and the assets that they own. We have services that range across the stack, and most importantly, at least from my very, very objective view, is the IBM Blockchain Platform, which is the team I work on and the software that we're developing, which is, like I said, that commercial version of Hyperledger Fabric and the advanced tooling that you can use to build out your blockchain applications. So what is the IBM Blockchain Platform? It's a mixture of advanced tooling, things that help you build and operate your networks. So building specifically using the VS Code extension, which you will all get to use today, hopefully, if you're walking through the tutorial with Jenna later on. And that is very focused on smart contracts, how to build them, how to debug them, things to look at, samples, everything around building out a first smart contract, and at the end of the day, the real smart contract that you're going to deploy into production when you get there for your applications. And we have tools that help you operate your network. So once you have deployed this big network that may connect all kinds of different entities and incumbents and whoever you're working in your network with, we built these tools to help you manage everything that network entails, from your components to giving you updates and patches when things change and when new features roll out, and everything around governance and bringing together those smart contracts and that application. All of this is running on Hyperledger Fabric, which again is the open source de facto #1 distributed ledger technology for enterprises today. It's been kind of talked about in a lot of different places, and Forbes has said that out of the 50 top blockchain enterprises, almost half of them are using Hyperledger Fabric, leading among all other protocols. And then what's important to make sure to understand is that IBM provides no vendor lock-in. So what that means is when you create your application and you use your governance tools to make sure to maintain and govern and manage that application, you can take that and deploy it anywhere. You can put that on different clouds, on AWS, Microsoft's Azure, Google Cloud. You could put it on-prem. You can have a mixture of all these different environments. Whatever you need for your production use cases, you can do. So what is the VS Code extension and what can it help you do? It's really going to help you build your smart contracts. You can go and download this for free, and later on I will send out a link for you to go and find this. You can start building your code in whatever language you're most comfortable with, from TypeScript to JavaScript, Java or Go. You can use any of those to start building out your smart contract, and it simplifies the DevOps process, which means taking the smart contract and really deploying it, testing it out on a network and connecting it back to your IBM Blockchain Platform, and at the end of the day, testing it and deploying it into production. Some of the main things that the VS Code extension gives you is specific tutorials that you can go as an introductory for all of those who said they're a 2 or a 3 on that poll. You can go download this for free and start with these tutorials. They're very basic. They'll walk you through what blockchain is, what Hyperledger Fabric is, and how to start building out your application smart contract. There are a bunch of different samples that you can use that provide best practices of how to build these out, and just sample smart contracts that you could try out right away and run to see how they work. And then it provides very deep testing and debugging capabilities for you to try out. So you can deploy it onto a local Fabric runtime. So it builds out that whole Fabric piece for you, that whole protocol underneath. You don't have to deal with that. And you can just try out and see what this smart contract can do. And then lastly, when you get there, you can connect back to the IBM Blockchain Platform to transact across the IBM Cloud, and down the line, transact anywhere. Now, the IBM Blockchain Platform piece, which is the management piece here, really lets you operate. So it deals specifically with all the components of Hyperledger Fabric, which is the underlying blockchain framework that we discussed. And it gives you the ability to see it in an extremely intuitive UI, which you can see on the right-hand side. It got a Red Dot Award for one of the best designs. I think it was in 2019. And it really helps you across everything you need, right? From creating your identities, adding organizations to the network, adding peers, ordering services, and all these different components, which is very specific to Hyperledger Fabric. which you can go and learn about. And we provide the ability to deploy this onto a Kubernetes cluster and to manage this all through containerized deployments. And at the end of the day, you can have this highly available in different data centers for those production use cases. There's great uptime, disaster recovery, everything you need to take these things into production. So with all that being said, what can you do now to get your journey started and try this out? You can go to the link on the left-hand side and go get the VS Code extension for free right now. You can go try that out. Like I said, all the tutorials built in there, the local Fabric runtime that's in there, you can go and start trying it out and testing it out. You can go get this IBM Blockchain Foundation Developer badge. So this is a pretty new badge that I think we released about 2 months ago or so. And you can go and get that badge similar to the one Jenna was talking about earlier. And it's an acclaim badge, which means you can take that, you can post it to your LinkedIn, you could post it anywhere really, and it's a digital badge to show that you've done this course to learn more about the IBM Blockchain Platform and how to develop on there. And then you can go and get the IBM Blockchain Platform itself for free for 30 days and test out how to deploy on there, and down the line, you know, try out what it means to use this for your DevOps, for your testing and pre-prod and down the line production grade applications. Another interesting place I would implore everyone to go to is this website, ibm.biz/blockchain user series. Once every other week, I think it's Thursdays at 11 a.m. Yes, we have one of our developer advocates and leader in go-to-market. Her name is Paige Krieger. She leads a conversation with two of our tech leads, and they always have a guest of honor who comes on and talks about something in the IBM blockchain platform. There's been about 15 of these, and you can all get those recordings and see them. It just gives you a 30-minute deep dive into what's happening, what the blockchain platform looks like, and some suggestions of things to try out. So I would highly recommend you guys sign up for this and go if you have time. And if not, you can always watch the recordings. So yeah, if you get a chance, definitely join. With that, I want to thank you all for joining today. It's always great to see that there's so many developers out there who are interested and want to start working on blockchain. And really, I'm here to do my best to help you all understand how to use the blockchain platform and the VS Code extension and to start building your applications. So feel free, like I said, you know, follow me on Twitter, send me a LinkedIn post or add me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to connect and help you out with your journey. And yeah, thanks so much for having me. And with that, I can pass it back over to Jenna. And oh, I see the votes have changed a little bit. Ooh, we got an expert here. That's awesome. Jenna, I am going to stop sharing.
Okay, maybe we can answer a few questions.
Yeah, sure. Let me see.
Are you able to view the questions and answers?
Yes.
Okay.
Recorded. Access to the slides. What's the best use case for blockchain in your opinion? Ooh, that's a great question, Vic. This is, I don't know if I have one. I think blockchain has so many different great use cases. And specifically where I come from, I'm very focused on use cases in enterprise land. So, you know, helping different companies and work together to in you know, business networks that they've probably had running for years, but have been using siloed databases for. So what I would say is in any kind of case where you see multiple different businesses who may not inherently trust each other, I think blockchain is a great answer. That's why you see a lot of supply chain use cases where you have farmers, distributors, suppliers, stores, all these different people who are working across moving a certain asset throughout the entire supply chain. And what's great about that is it makes it more transparent. It provides them a database per se, or a blockchain that they can share, and they can all agree on how things are added and how transactions are made across that supply chain, and they can track where certain things move across that supply chain. So I think that's a great use case, but really any place where you have multiple different parties that are working together to achieve a certain business goal, and they all tend to have their own systems and their own databases to record generally the same information. You can put that all together into, you can think of a single database that they govern together, rather than having a single third-party administrator. You know, in the case of just having a centralized distributed database, they would have to trust a third party. In this case, you don't have to, because everyone governs it together. Is there anything pre-configured on IBM Cloud for this class? I think, Jenna, that you might be able to answer that question.
Let's see.
Maybe we'll get back to that one. Actually, I see someone.
I'm trying to find where the question is.
It comes from Tom. Tom, we'll get back to you in a second. VS Code install is a bit weird. It does not detect Docker for Windows.
Is there anything pre-configured on IBM Cloud? Pre-configured on IBM Cloud. So I'll work through getting everything installed, including the VS Code extension. But as far as pre-configured, having Node, I think is there are some prereqs that we will go through when we get to the second part.
Cool. Okay. Who set the rules for people to join permission networks? Great question, Joe. This is very dependent on the use case. If you are creating that private permission blockchain, it's up to you. At the end of the day, this is like building specific ad hoc, uses of blockchain. So if I'm building a network with 3 of my friends, and we decide to make this a consortium of 4 of us, we all set the permissions. Permissions can mean what you can and can't view. If Joe and I want to transact, but we don't want Jenna to know what we're transacting or when we're transacting, that's something that's possible. At the end of the day, we will have a ledger that we share, but there's also a shared ledger overall that all of us can see, and we can work on with certain asset transactions that we want to be more transparent to the entire network. So again, it's something that allows you to make certain pieces more transparent, but at the end of the day, different enterprises and different networks have different types of needs, and certain people want to be able to see certain transactions, and they might want others to not. So it's very dependent on the use case itself. Blockchain can be used in Java. Yes, it can be. It's dependent on the blockchain, but when it comes to the IBM Blockchain Platform and building smart contracts for Hyperledger Fabric with the VS Code extension, yes, you can start building with Java. How do you usually ensure traceability within supply chains? Sensor RFIDs. Great question, Maria. So at the end of the day, the blockchain is really focused on the data layer, right? when it comes to sensors, RFIDs, all of that is what I would call more edge technology and IoT. And so you may have to have sensors at the end of the day. Yes, you may have to have RFIDs. It's all dependent on the system. What the blockchain does is it facilitates the data from those sensors, from those edge technologies to be more transparent and to be put on a blockchain so that it can be immutable and can be seen by the people who need to see it. So that means, if I have sensors to make sure that that in food trust, when I'm trying to make sure that an apple was kept at a certain temperature throughout the move, when a distributor took it from a certain facility and decided to move it somewhere else, I may have sensors that make sure the environment that apple was in is recorded onto the blockchain, and if it goes above a certain temperature, it may, put a transaction on the blockchain that says this apple, while in transit from X to Y, actually was not kept at the temperature it should have been, and then you'll be able to see that on the blockchain and find out that, oh, this apple may have not been held at the certain temperature that it needs to be in order to be good, in order to be, safe to eat. And then down the line, it makes it a more transparent understanding for us to see where certain things may go wrong within that supply chain. Next question, how do you as a startup company connect with IBM to build an MVP? All right, great question. So there are a lot of different routes. I'd say the best thing to do would be to send me an email, which is on this deck and is going to be shared. There are a few routes. You can become an IBM partner. There are a few different types of ways to get free cloud credits as startups working with IBM. And there's certain routes that you can go in order to actually get help with experts from IBM to help you build out your use cases. So it would be great if you could just send me an email and I will try to point you in the right direction. How do you see blockchain evolving within Latin America market for the next year? Wow, that's a good one. So blockchain is really taking off in Latin America recently, and this is, of course, from our view within IBM, but also on a global view. I mean, across all these different companies. Blockchain specifically in the enterprise space is evolving very rapidly. We have a lot of Latin American banks who are interested in using blockchain to work together with governmental entities to make sure that certain assets are moved in the way they should be moved, to have better compliance and better regulation across the way that that certain assets and certain currencies actually exchange hands. So I think there's a lot of potential there in the financial markets down in Latin America. I think from a more permissionless and public blockchain, I think there's been a lot of corruption in Latin America, and this is, of course, my opinion specifically. But I've seen a lot of corruption, and I do see that Bitcoin has been doing well, especially in places like Venezuela, where people are buying and selling Bitcoin because a lot of the inflation in their currency has been skyrocketing. So I see there being a lot of different implementations here, both from an enterprise space for actual regulation, within large enterprises, within banks, with governments, and in places where the government may be not as trustworthy, and there may be a little bit more difficulty in dealing with being able to buy and sell things with local currency. There's a lot of implementations of using certain outside currencies and cryptocurrencies to help stabilize the money that you have. So I think that's an interesting use case. But I think that we could have another hour, 2 hour conversation just on that. So good question, Maria. Next question, how is certain private business information kept safe? Vic. So this is all very focused on the architecture. And again, this depends on the certain protocol or framework you're using. Within Hyperledger Fabric, there is something called a channel. And channels work kind of like Slack channels. Or if everyone's ever used, let's say WhatsApp or any messaging platform, you can think of it as like a conversation. So Hyperledger Fabric creates these channels that certain people are allowed and not allowed on based on the permissions that you've implemented. And it basically creates a mini ledger between all the participants on that channel. And those participants are the ones who can see that information and the way assets move across that channel. There are things that are a little bit more complicated, called private data collections, and that kind of obfuscates what can and can't be seen within channels. But I think that's another conversation. I would say the best thing to do is go to Hyperledger Fabric, search Hyperledger Fabric on Google and look up the documentation and read a little bit more about the actual architecture of Hyperledger Fabric and how they use, how it's architected to make sure certain transactions are private based on the permissions that you have. Can you really explain perhaps an example how the consensus works when participants don't really know the data submitted by other one is correct or not? So CG, this is very dependent on the specific type of consensus. There are, in permissioned and private networks, there tends to be a type of consensus that is, I would say like more algorithmic, meaning because certain people know who is in the network, that there's a certain algorithm that is used to order transactions, and maybe this is very specific to Hyperledger Fabric. And there are certain endorsement policies where there are different users and they have to endorse and approve a certain transaction that they have to see. So they run that transaction on their computer and make sure that what the transaction is legitimate, meaning from a, if you're trying to send funds, they have to make sure that the person who's sending the funds has enough funds. They have to make sure that the person receiving the funds, it has a legitimate address, and they have to make sure that that address can have money sent over to it. But it slightly differs across different protocols and different frameworks and different types of consensus. So it's a bit of a complicated question. We have IBM Blockchain Platform deployed in our company on premise. What is the best way to integrate with other nodes given too strict security restrictions? Abdullah, that is an interesting question. The best way to integrate with other nodes. So at the end of the day, IBM and IBM Blockchain Platform can provide, certain security measures for the components that we know the background of. We know the software that's used to deploy them. It's very hard, especially in very strict and regulated industries as well as regulated networks, to be able to implement, certain security measures for outside nodes that may not be that could be deployed really from anywhere with any type of software. So it's a tough question. I don't know if I have a specific answer for that. I mean, you can always connect from your network to another, from your node to another node that's deployed from an open source Hyperledger Fabric network, and you can connect from open source nodes to from IBM Blockchain Platform nodes to open source nodes. But I'm not sure I can comment too much on the security that you can provide for those external nodes when we don't really know where they're coming from. Cool. Where do you think the blockchain can't be implemented as of this time? And also, Jenna, let me know if I'm going over time, if you need to get into your workshop at all, because I'm just going down these questions and answering them one by one.
Sure. No, I think it's good to get to these kind of questions.
Sure. Okay. So what was that? Where do you think the blockchain can't be implemented as of this time? So that's an interesting question. I think it can be, so the first thing I'd say is I think blockchain is not going to solve everyone's problems. It's not going to save the world. Blockchain really helps, like I said, bring different businesses or a lot of different people together to agree on the way rules can be implemented on a network and the way you can transact on that network. So it's going to be helpful in any multi-party transactional based networks or consortia. And I think in those specific cases, blockchain usually has a pretty good way to solve some complicated problems. I think a lot of times when you're thinking of certain internal systems, when you're thinking of, places, there's a lot of places where databases, both distributed and just centralized, not even distributed databases, can do the job a lot better than a blockchain, because databases have been around for a lot longer. They have much faster and better performance. So blockchain use cases you really have to vet your use case to make sure that a blockchain fits. And if it does, it can really help create a lot more seamless ability to share transparent data. Yes, Manpreet Singh said maybe in places where there are large sets of data. That is true, but it is, again, very focused on multi-party transactions and multi-party rules that have to be implemented, where you want everyone to have an equal hand at making sure the rules are upkept, as opposed to having to trust a third-party provider or centralizing it completely in the case of either a trusted third-party provider or just someone within the network being an administrator of the data within that network. What programming languages are used to develop software for blockchain? I would say almost all of them. It depends on the blockchain. It depends on the protocol. It depends on what you're building. The IBM Blockchain Platform is built on Hyperledger Fabric. I've probably said that 50 times at this point, but Hyperledger Fabric is, you can build on multiple different languages. You can build smart contracts, like I said, with Java, Go, Node.js, so, JavaScript, TypeScript. But I'd say probably the core code base is mostly written on the protocol level in Go. There's some, there's a lot of C, I think, ++ in there. But in general, I would say you don't really have to worry about that if you're looking to, I don't think you're looking to build a protocol. If you're looking to actually build a solution, generally you can build it in so many different languages. So really it would be whichever language is most comfortable for you. Is there a Slack or Discord for IBM Blockchain? There's no Slack. I would say you can go to Rocket Chat to hear more about Hyperledger Fabric. Discord, I don't know if we have a Discord. Jenna, maybe maybe you have one for IBM Developer, or?
No, we don't have a Discord that I know of. We're working on a Slack. but not that I'm aware of specifically.
Got it. Is there a way to reverse transactions, possibly a transaction made by mistake? So there is, you can reverse a transaction, but reversing a transaction means submitting another transaction that does the opposite of the first one. In other words, if I send you $5, Vic, you can send me $5 back, but there's no way of, of turning back the time basically and saying cancel. It'll be put on the ledger that it was sent one way and sent back the other. Once on the blockchain, forever on the blockchain. So that's something to keep in mind. Yes, it's dangerous. You don't want to make mistakes, but that's kind of what it is, at least in Hyperledger Fabric. Are there any practices that use blockchain technology on data layer for application which require updating and query data heavily? There are, so if you're looking for best practices, you can find those, and I can send you some more information on that, on some of our samples and tutorials, where it talks a little bit about creating your applications, and how to deal with, the data layer, and updating certain pieces of a blockchain. But yes, there are a lot of best practices. Ooh, tell us a blockchain joke.
I have a couple.
Okay, let's go, Jenna.
Okay, so the crypto trader says, "What are a million years like to you?" God responds, "Like 1 second." The crypto trader says, "What are $1 million like to you?" God says, "Like 1 penny." Stockbroker says, "Can I have a penny?" God says, "Just a second." More of a dad joke. So and I guess these are more Bitcoin jokes than blockchain. They seem to be a little bit better. So the optimist says the glass is half full. The pessimist says the glass is half empty. The Bitcoiner says the water is totally centralized.
Guys, I would say the best thing to do is if you all go to, if you guys get the VS Code extension, there's something called Conga Comics in there. We have a great designer named Ed Moffat who literally creates blockchain comics with a lot of funny and sometimes very much dad, I would say, in the focused on dad jokes probably. Very, very corny, but pretty funny. So you can go and check those out. Look up Conga Comics. Very funny stuff. Okay, is Quilt a best practice to use for Ripple transaction? If not, what is best practice? So to be honest with you, I am not very up to date on Ripple and how and what are best practices there. I would probably, I don't even know where to tell you to go look. Maybe on Ripple's Discord. I don't know exactly where, if they, I know they, I want to say they have a Discord, but to be honest, for Ripple, I am not your guy, unfortunately. Sorry, Akshay. And next question, I hear a lot of trees, still do not see the forest. How does blockchain change the way business was done up to now? I'm not sure I understand the question, Tom. Or is this another joke? I don't know. I think that was the last one. So if I don't hear back from Tom, yeah, I think that's it.
Very cool. Thank you so much, Daniel.
Yeah, of course.
We'll answer some questions at the end as well. I want to get started on the workshop portion of of the event this evening. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Perfect.
I'll be on for another 15 or 20 minutes to answer some more questions. So continue putting them in the chat for me if anyone has any.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I know you all probably have experienced this working from home. The demo gods have not been kind. I think they're starting to throttle me. However, luckily I have everything screenshotted. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through step by step with all of the screenshotted images so that you can work through this as well. Some of the things will take a little bit of time. As far as getting set up goes, and then building your first smart contracts with blockchain should take you about 20 minutes. So to get started, if you haven't already, please go ahead and sign up for an IBM Cloud account with the link here. I will post it again in the chat for you all. There's all of the resources. There we go. So go ahead and sign up for an IBM Cloud account. You will sign up for an IBM Cloud free light tour account. And this is the login screen, so you know if you're in the right place. So once you get logged into your account, you'll see your IBM Cloud dashboard. There's a few different things you can do. You can click on catalog. You can search from the search bar at the top as well. If you click on catalog, you'll be able to search through all of the different IBM Cloud products. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to search for the Kubernetes service. And you're going to create a free tier Kubernetes cluster. So if you search for a Kubernetes service, search for Kubernetes service, you're going to create a free Kubernetes cluster. The standard plan is the default. So if you click on standard, you can switch to the free version, which looks like this. And you will create a new Kubernetes cluster. Now, this is the part that does take a little bit of time, so I've already done it ahead of time and gotten all of that together for you. So it takes about 5 to 10 minutes, depending on, I guess, your internet provider and how much you've been online today. But essentially, once your Kubernetes cluster is done and finalized, it'll look like this. So you'll see your free cluster. It'll say it's normal, and it will tell you that it will expire in 30 days. There's a one-time setup of your CLI tools. So inside of your terminal, you can do this from within VS Code. You're going to enter in the curl command to set up your CLI tools. Then you're going to access your cluster from your IBM Cloud account. So if you enter in this second CLI command here, IBM Cloud login, it's going to allow you to log in to the IBM Cloud account that you just created. You should only have one account. If you might have multiple for certain reasons, so you can select the account that you would like to use. Second command is going to set the Kubernetes context to your cluster for this terminal session. There's also some documentation provided. But essentially, once you log into your IBM Cloud account, you'll be able to access your cluster, and then you'll be able to verify running the kubectl command down here. So if you haven't already gotten the VS Code extension, you'll want to do that now. So let me just get to all of my tabs of tabs. So this is all in the, there we go. This is all in the slides, but just to make things a little easier, let's open this back up. Perfect. Okay. So you're going to install the VS Code extension. Looks like that here. You should get a pop-up. VS just lets you know that VS Code is required to install the VS Code extension. And then that should open up your VS Code platform. Now, there are a few requirements, one of them being the IBM Cloud Account extension. So in order to access your IBM Cloud Account extension, I'm sorry, your IBM Cloud account within the IBM Blockchain Platform, you'll need to install that extension first. It is required for you to install that. I think there may be one or two other requirements. Most of them are just suggestions. It will show you what is actually required. So once you have everything installed, you'll be able to install the IBM Blockchain Platform VS Code extension. And then once it's finished installing, you'll be able to manage your extensions from the gear icon within VS Code. Once your VS Code extension is installed, it should show up on the right here as this little 4-log circle block thing. If for some reason you don't see that, if you right-click along the sidebar, you should see IBM Cloud Blockchain Platform. So it may just be hidden. So you want to make sure that that's visible so you can access it. So the next part, so this is what you should see. So when you click on the VS Code extension for the IBM Blockchain Platform, this is what you should see. So you'll see basic scaffold here, smart contracts, fabric environments, IBM Blockchain Platform on cloud being one of them, fabric gateways, and fabric wallets. So the next thing we're going to do is log into our IBM Cloud account. So if you click on log on into IBM Cloud, you can log in with your username and password through the extension. So you'll log in with your email and your password, and then you'll be able to select an account. So you should only have one account, although if you have multiple accounts, choose the account that you set up your Kubernetes cluster on. I would also recommend waiting for your node workers to finish with your cluster so it's accessible. So once you're logged in, you should see this message down here at the bottom that shows that you're logged into IBM Cloud and which account you're logged in under. And then once everything is logged in, you'll be able to create a new instance. So when you click create a new instance, it will ask you if you want VS Code to open the external website. So you can go ahead and open that. And then this is where it'll take you. So it'll take you here to create a new instance of the blockchain platform. So I'm going to walk you through how to set up with the VS platform blockchain platform solution. This is not the running it locally option. This is the setting up blockchain platform as a service. in your catalog. So I think it's 29 cents per virtual processing core hour. Your Kubernetes cluster is the free tier, so there's no charge for that. But I just want to mention that so that you know. So once you create a new instance of the blockchain platform in your IBM Cloud account, this is where it will take you to. So it will give you a welcome, and it will walk you through a setup of your instance of the IBM Blockchain Platform. So the first thing we're going to do is create a Kubernetes cluster on IBM Cloud. So I've already walked through for all of you to do that. So you don't need to do anything here other than click next. So when you click next, this is where you will be able to, oh, I'm sorry, this is showing the cluster requirements for creating a, linking to a Kubernetes cluster. So this is just showing the requirements for the Kubernetes cluster. So you don't need to do anything there. If you click next, you'll be able to select My Cluster Free, which is the free Kubernetes cluster that we created at the beginning. So you'll be able to select that option. It also will tell you here that your Kubernetes cluster will be deleted after 30 days. So it's just letting you know. So the free cluster you've selected will expire in 29 days from the day that you first instantiate it. And then the next thing will be to launch the IBM Cloud Platform console. So when we launch the console, so this is the IBM Blockchain Platform in the IBM Cloud portal. So within your IBM Cloud account, this is where you will be able to come and manage your blockchain platform solution. So when we get started, the first thing I wanted to do and go through is developing a smart contract. So if you click on if you click at the top here, you'll be able to select from Build, Develop Smart Contracts. And that'll actually take you here, and this is what we're going to work through today. So now that we have everything set up here, I have in the slides also put all of the prerequisites. So just for reference, the prerequisites for the VS Code, getting everything installed and running on the VS Code extension, and being able to develop a smart contract with the IBM Cloud Blockchain Platform and the VS Code extension. You'll need VS Code 1.32 or greater. And again, this is all in the comments on the slides, so you have access to all of them. Node version 8 or greater, and NPM version 5 or greater. You'll need Docker version 17.06.2 or greater, and Docker Compose version 1.14 or greater. There's a few more, I guess, checks. There's a few more checks here for Windows, just to ensure that you have the right items that you need installed. And then you can check that you have the right Node, NPM, Docker, and Docker Compose versions installed. So when you go back to your VS Code extension, we have everything set up both in the IBM Cloud account and in our VS Code extension. What you'll do is you'll make sure that you click on the blockchain icon. So they're in the blockchain extension, and within the smart contracts, you're going to click the 3 dots, and you're going to select Create New Project. Now, you can select the default contract. So the default contract has CRUD operations to a ledger shared by all network members. So there's also the option for the private data contract. So this is going to allow verify operations and CRUD to a collection. So it's going to be private to a single network member. So it's not going to be visible to all of the members of the network. So we're going to create a default contract. So and somebody asked about what languages, what technologies can you build blockchain solutions in. So here we have options for creating smart contracts. So you can spin up a new smart contract in Java, JavaScript, TypeScript, or Go. So for the sake of this example, we are going to choose TypeScript. So the name of the asset defaults to my asset. But you can change it. So if you do decide to change the name of your asset, you'll need to remember to swap out my asset for whatever you named it in future steps. So for simplicity purposes, you can just keep it as my asset. So the next thing we're going to do is choose a location to save the project. So once you type in the name of your asset and click enter, you're going to browse, and then you're going to create a new folder and name the project whatever you want. So the example here, we just used demo contract. For reference, so I've worked through this in a few different coding languages. In naming your asset, be sure not to use numbers in your asset, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you are going to use a number, you're going to want to spell it out in English. It does not allow you to save assets with number values. So just for consistency purposes, your demo contract, I would follow suit. I haven't had issues naming folders with numbers. With adding any numbers to demo contract or any other name for your location where you're saving your project, but I would avoid numeric values if possible. So when you click create, it's going to open up your new folder, and then you can just click save. And then the last step is going to be add to workspace. So this is going to add the project to your workspace. The extension is going to generate a skeleton contract based on your selected language. So Java, JavaScript, TypeScript, or Go, and asset name. So once that's done, you'll be able to navigate to the Explorer here. Most likely the type icon in the left sidebar, so it's up here. It's a little cut off up here. I apologize. So you can navigate to your document icon here, and then you'll be able to open. Go here. You'll be able to open the source my asset contract .ts file. So I clicked here and went to my workspace, and you can see the demo contract project that I just created. So this is the skeleton contract that was generated in TypeScript. And if we take a look at the my asset contract .ts file to see your smart contract code scaffold, let's open this up here. So this is the smart contract code scaffold. So if you're this far, or you get this far watching this in a playback later, give yourself a big pat on the back. You've got yourself your very first smart contract, and it was that easy to spin one up. So you're able to select what language you'd like to create a smart contract in. You're able to spin up a new project. and the code has been generated here in the code of your choice. So we have TypeScript here. So let's take a deeper look into what's going on with the smart contract here. So Daniel talked a little bit about what is blockchain, what's a smart contract, kind of what's going on at a more high level. So let's take a look at the code and understand what's going on. So the generated smart contract code scaffold, it provides a good example of common operations for interacting with data on a blockchain ledger. So all the code here is written and meant to be interacting on a blockchain ledger. So if we skip over the myAssetExists function, let's take a look at the create myAsset, which is right here. So the create myAsset function here. So the empty brackets in the @transaction function tell you that this function is intended to change the contents of the ledger. So transactions like this are typically submitted as opposed to evaluated. The function is called create myAsset, and it takes myAsset ID and value, both of which are strings. So if we take a look here, we have myAsset ID, data type is a string. And in all of these functions here, the data type that it's taking is a string. When the transaction is submitted, a new asset is then created with the key myAsset ID. Let's see here. For example, let's say you were to create 001 or item 001, a little dog. Then later on, when you read the value of key 001, you'll learn that the value of that particular state is a little dog. So let's take a look at the next transaction. So this is the read myAsset right here. It's the function we're taking a look at. So this one starts with the @transaction false. So the false means that this function is not typically intended to change the contents of the ledger. So transactions like these are typically evaluated. So the create myAsset, those are typical transactions like create myAsset are typically submitted. Functions like read myAsset are typically evaluated. You'll often hear transactions referred to as queries. So as you can see, this function only takes myAsset ID and returns the value of whatever state the key points to. So we're just getting the data and evaluating it and actually making it available to read. So take a look at the other transactions in the contract at your leisure, and then you can move on. We're going to move on right now to packaging and deploying the contract so you can start using it. So the next thing we're going to do here . So if you go back, we have our project here, but if you go back and you take a look at your smart contract scaffold, you're going to see that it says no packages found. So now that you've created your smart contract and understand the transactions, it's time to package it. So smart contract projects are packaged into .cds files, which is a special type of file that can be installed on Hyperledger Fabric peers. So we have our project now, but we want to package it so that it can actually be installed on Hyperledger Fabric peers. So what we're going to do in order to do that is we're going to click the 3 dots next to our smart contracts. And we're going to hover over the package open project, and we're going to go ahead and select that. Pro tip, another way of accessing and running commands on the blockchain platform extension is if you're on a Mac, it'll be Shift Command P. and you'll be able to access the different commands there as well. So once we click package open project, what we'll see is things will be running, things will be going in your terminal. And then when it's done building, what you'll see under smart contracts is you'll see the name of your project and should be a 0.0.1. So whatever name you gave to your package contract, and then 0.0.1. Now, if you have multiple projects in here, you'll probably see multiple packages here. You can also package it more than once. However, you need to change the package version number because you can only have one of each kind. So the package you just created now can be installed onto any Hyperledger Fabric peer. For example, you could right-click and choose Export Package. You can right-click and choose Export Package, and then deploy it into a cloud environment using the IBM Blockchain Platform Operational Tooling Console. So if you look here in the Fabric environments, we have this IBM Blockchain Platform on cloud. So this is the blockchain platform that I just created and that you all have created back in the previous steps, and you'll be connecting, you'll be exporting your smart contract to your blockchain platform that you've created here directly, right from within VS Code. Now, what I've discovered from eating up all the bandwidth over here where I'm staying is there are some errors with TypeScript. However, it does not prevent the project from building. So I'm working through some of these errors. I'll be working on figuring out what the issue is in the next few days. JavaScript, there aren't any errors or any problems with that. So if you choose Java or JavaScript, there shouldn't be any errors associated with that. These are more NPM warnings with the TypeScript. They're not actually associated with the project, so I'm still figuring out what all of the pieces are. Here we go. So the pieces that we worked through today were getting your IBM Cloud account set up, creating a new instance of a Kubernetes cluster from the free tier. We installed the VS Code extension for the IBM Blockchain Platform, and we created a new blockchain platform instance in your IBM Cloud account as well. So to continue working on projects, there's a few things. So this is the starter for the IBM Blockchain Platform for developers. Let's just see here. This is, again, the code for the VS Code extension. And then this is the IBM Cloud Blockchain Essentials badge. I am going to make sure that it's clear as well for the new badge that they just released, the V2 for Blockchain Developer. So congratulations to all of you that followed along or are following along or will follow along in a bit. You've created your first instance of IBM Blockchain on the IBM Blockchain Platform. Maybe it may have been your first time creating a Kubernetes cluster, and you created your very first smart contract. So I want to show you a few things here. So the one thing is, so this is the tutorial that we worked through today. I also wanted to show you, as Daniel mentioned, there's really a lot that you can do within the VS Code extension. There we go. Okay. One of them being, let's go here. There we go. So if you're trying to figure out, like, where did all this stuff go? So this is, again, your VS Code extension. If you click at the bottom here, I want to show you this here because it kind of got cut off in the slides. So this is my blockchain platform instance here. And if you, as you can see here, it shows the IBM Cloud account that it's associated with, that I logged into just from within my terminal here. If you click on Blockchain Home, one of the things that you can find here, and once you take the time to get your VS Code extension installed and set up, if you still need some time to finish doing that, one of the things that you can find here are lots of blockchain tutorials. So you can learn more about Hyperledger Fabric, learn more about IBM Blockchain, but more importantly, you can these are tutorials that you can follow along with and complete to grow your blockchain skills. So if we have 10 basic tutorials and other tutorials. So if we have creating a smart contract, deploying a smart contract, invoking a smart contract from VS Code. So similar to what we just walked through, you can actually, again, from the blockchain home here, if you click on tutorials, it will take you to the tutorial gallery, and you can follow one by one an introduction into blockchain, creating your first smart contract, deploying your first smart contract, which we just did, invoking a smart contract from VS Code, which we just did, from an external application. And they give you about average times too. So in about 20 minutes, you can upgrade a smart contract. In about 15 minutes, you can debug. 20 minutes, you can test a smart contract. So there's a lot of great tutorials, some of which you can earn badges for as well, but it's right from within the VS Code extension. And as Daniel mentioned too, which I haven't searched around for yet, are the blockchain comics as well that you can find here. I'm probably going to look for those in a little bit here and find where those are. Let me go back. Oop. Perfect. So I would just like to say congratulations to all of you. You now know enough to be dangerous. You know enough to be able to have high-level conversations about blockchain. We have lots of resources for you as well at the end in the slides. So a few things I want to show you. You know where all the tutorials are now. So again, the event resources I've posted in the chat. We have the IBM Cloud sign up. Oh, hold on. Let me reshare. Crowdcast is a little funny. Okay, how long have you not been able to see my screen? Let's start with that. Okay, so let's try this again. Since the congratulations slide. Oh, okay. So let me do this then. Sorry about that. Thank you for letting me know. Okay. So this is what we're going to do. Okay. So let me show you this again. So if from within your VS Code, let me just make sure you can, yep. Okay. So from within VS Code, sorry about that. need a little bell or something that goes off when it's like, hey, your screen's not working. Maybe I'll let Crowdcast know. So from within the VS Code extension here, we have our IBM Blockchain Platform extension here. At the bottom here, this is what I was referring to. At the bottom here, we have this, it says Blockchain Home. So this is just a home for my IBM Blockchain Platform. It shows the account that is associated with my IBM Cloud account that I'm using here. This is the same cloud account that I use to create my blockchain platform instance, which is where I also created my Kubernetes cluster. If we look here, this is where you'll see your smart contracts. This is where you'll see your Fabric environments. I've been eating up bandwidth, so I think they kicked me off. But if you click on this blockchain home, this is where you'll be able to see some really cool stuff. So just 1 second. I want to make sure my computer doesn't lose juice here. Okay. So if we look here, we have this really great space in our IBM Blockchain Platform. We have tutorials here. We have other resources. So we have the extension documentation, IBM Blockchain Platform documentation. We have a free ebook, Getting Started with Enterprise Blockchain. You can always also join the IBM Blockchain. Oh, now it wants to reconnect. Okay. You can always join the IBM Blockchain Platform User Series webcast. And then there's sample code. So there's a fab car and commercial paper. There's Fabric and Hyperledger Fabric documentation as well. So what I wanted to point you all to is this tutorials at the top. So if we click here, so we have 10 basic tutorials and 7 other tutorials. So we have tutorials that you can earn badges for as well. This is available from outside VS Code interface. So you can download it as a PDF, and when you open the tutorial, so it's going to open it from within the VS Code extension view here, but you can download it, download all of them as PDFs as well if you want to access them outside the VS Code interface. So we have an introduction, creating a smart contract, which you all know how to do now, deploying a smart contract, which you know how to do, invoking a smart contract from VS Code. That's what we did today. You can also invoke a smart contract from an external application. Upgrading a smart contract, debugging, testing a smart contract, publishing an event. So these each take on average anywhere from 15 to 45 minutes, on average 20 to 30 minutes. So I'd highly recommend all of you spending some time to work through this and also claiming your badges. So some of these you can earn badges for. These are things you can add to your LinkedIn or your GitHub, really show your technical skills working with blockchain. And you can work through the tutorials from right inside the VS Code extension. So you're working all from one place. So you can actually work on creating your projects here and packaging them and exporting them while you're working through the tutorial here. So it's actually really nice. Let me go back a few slides. Perfect. So just to share a few resources with you again. So this is the IBM Cloud Blockchain Platform, IBM Blockchain Developer Platform. So this is the getting started view that we saw here. Sorry, here. this is the link to get right to the VS Code extension. So if you just go to ibm.biz/VS Code blockchain, that'll take you right to the VS Code extension to install it. Once you have all of your prerequisites installed, it will run on the back end and tell you if you're missing something that needs to be installed. I think I had 3 or 4 things that I needed installed, or proper node versions. So one of the issues I've run into is, I think maybe a node version issue. It hasn't stopped it. It hasn't stopped from creating a smart contract or from running the build. However, it has thrown me some errors. So I would recommend node version 10. I would try not to go higher than 10 if possible. You can also earn your IBM Blockchain Platform Essentials badge. I will make sure to add the new, the new badge that Daniel's team just finished updating as well. He's added it in his slides. I'll make sure that it's with all of the resources at the end, so you can easily find it. So back to this screen. So congratulations to all of you for sticking through and sticking by us and making it to the end of our event here. You all now know enough to hold your own. You know, I think people talk about blockchain in a lot of generalities and very high level. I think Daniel's talk does a really great job of exploring and understanding at a high level, and hopefully working through and taking a look at some of the code. It demystifies a little bit what blockchain is, what smart contracts look like, and essentially all your smart contracts are doing is you're writing code and packaging it in a way where it's readable on the Hyperledger Fabric to basically update and create and submit and read and submit information. Is basically fundamentally what you're doing. I know it seems like a big mystical uniform, so hopefully this demystifies some of that for you. I have the resources here. I will post them again. Let me just go here real quick. I'm going to post them again for you all in the chat, so you have access to all of them. Oops, here we go. There we go. So, who's in the chat here? Perfect. Oh, here we go. There we go. So these are all of the resources. There are additional resources here at the end that I want to make sure you all know are here. So these are some great blockchain resources. So how to get started with blockchain. There's a typo. Blockchain 101 Quick Start Guide. Develop a blockchain application from scratch in Python. I know Python's not listed in the VS Code extension, but this is a tutorial on how to develop a blockchain application in Python. Developing smart contracts with the IBM IBM Blockchain VS Code extension, and then IBM Blockchain Developers, where you can install the VS Code extension. The last thing I want to show you here, so this is the certifications. I'm going to update this to the newest version that Daniel said they just released recently, a few weeks ago. You can connect with us on social. So one thing, let's see. Okay, so last thing I want to post for all of you to make it really easy to connect with us, ask us any questions you have, any help you may need with anything, where you can connect with us after. Put it right here. So feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn, ask us questions there. Feel free to follow us. Last thing is, Daniel provided me with this really fantastic appendix that I wanted to share with all of you. I know he had to go, but we have an appendix here really going through all of the different features of the VS Code extension for the IBM Blockchain Platform. This is showing you required and optional components, what you already have, and really all of the features of the extension here. I haven't seen the way to access the comics, but I'm going to add those slides in at the end so you can all see how to access the comics in the VS Code extension. I'm going to add some slides to show you exactly how to do that. So make sure you here we go. Make sure you all access the slides, and I will be updating that this week so that you can all have access to all of the resources as well as the comics. So I'd like to thank you all so much for coming. If you have any last-minute questions, I can hang around for a few minutes. If you have any questions later, feel free to reach out to me. So one question, where will the recording be posted? So the link that you used to join the session today, that is the same link that you will access the recording. So what happens is this live stream converts to a recording so you can access the entire thing here. So you don't need a new link or to find where the recording is. It'll be in this exact same location. All the cognitive class badges you can get on your regular claim, at least that was the way it worked for me. Yes, so the cognitive class badges you can get on your regular claim. So you should be fine there. You don't need to be an IBM employee or anything like that, or anything specific to access the badges. So it's really nice because you can do a little more of a deep dive and earn some badges and build some projects and show on your social, especially LinkedIn, that you've done the work and you've earned the badges. So you know the basic foundations of what you need to know to develop in blockchain. Can you share the link to the Google Slides? Yes. So if you look at the bottom here, I have all of the links, IBM Cloud account, the event slides, the live stream recording, and the Essentials V2 badge. Are you able to hear me now? Just want to make sure that it didn't having internet issues. Prep screenshots. Yes, and I will repeat your audio stalled. 2 questions. Where will the okay? So you don't need a separate Acclaim account for the badge. You can use your regular Acclaim account. The recording will be posted at the same link that you used to join. So if you look at the links that I posted here, the live stream recording, that's the same link that you used to join today. And that is where the recording will be. So the recording, perfect. Perfect. Good, you can hear me. The recording will, the live stream will be converted into a recording in the same space. So actually when we, once we end the broadcast, it'll convert into a recording. So you can find it right here. Are there any other questions that I can answer for you right now? And again, feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. And if you have any questions at any time, please don't hesitate to ask me. Do you need an IBM account and an Acclaim account? So they're not connected. So you'd need an Acclaim account. I'm sorry. You need an IBM Cloud account in order to do any IBM Cloud development. So if you want to develop an IBM blockchain solution, you will need an IBM Cloud account. An Acclaim account, so you don't need an IBM account I'm sorry, you don't need an IBM account for a claim. So I have 2 accounts for everything, just so I can test and make sure what your experience is as an external to IBM person trying to do the same work. I signed up with my regular UMich email, like my college email. So you don't need an IBM Cloud account to sign up for a claim, if that makes sense. So I'm glad you all had, I hope you all had a really great time. I'm glad you all came. We will continue to do more of this in the future. I will be adding some slides this week. Things are always updating. Yes, VS Code is free. Visual Studio Code is completely free. Feel free to, let me just post these again. Feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn. Feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. Oh, I guess it won't let me send it again. Let me just delete this. Delete. No, well, okay. Huh. It's not letting me. Let me try this. There we go. I had to post some too. Do you need an Acclaim account for a badge? So yes, so you need an Acclaim account to earn any badges. An IBM Cloud account is separate from Acclaim. So you need a separate Acclaim account for the badges. So feel free to follow us on LinkedIn. Cool. All right, Maru, I'll see you when I get on LinkedIn too. Thank you all so much for coming. I'm going to play a little music while we leave here, make our way out. But thank you all so much for coming. And I will see you on the other side at the next one. So feel free. We'll have some great, we have a developer tools series coming up. So if you want to see the events coming up for if you look at IBM Developer Meetup, IBM Developer Austin, we have a Cloud Developer Tools series coming up. So Developer Tools CLI. We are going to be going over OAuth and how to use APIs, how to make API calls and manage your different APIs. So how to build a project using some of our different IBM developer tools that we have. So watch out for those. That's going to be next week for the rest of September. And we'll have another great series coming up in October as well. So take a look at IBM Developer Austin, and hopefully I'll see you all next week at the IBM Developer Tools series. Let me just put this here for you. Post it in the chat, make it a little easier. Okay, cool. So here's the link. You can check out the IBM Developer Austin meetup. This is the event for next week. So we'll be starting with the IBM Cloud CLI, and then we'll be moving on the following week to OAuth and managing OAuth easily for all your different authentication purposes, and then we'll be covering APIs as well the following week. For sure. Thank you all so much for coming. Enjoy a little music. And I'll see you all next week.